Denmark is a small, flat country, and the only renewable resources we have is mainly wind power, a little PV, and some biomass.
The green transition started back in the 70s, where we were hit very hard by the oil crisis. We were very, very vulnerable and exposed to different prices in the oil markets, later in the coal markets, and that made us realize that we needed to do away with the dependence on fossil fuel that we had at the time.
So apart from the climate issue, there are also other issues of pollution and so on that need to be dealt with, and I think the decarbonization of the energy system is also a way to address these problems.
We also come to a stage where renewables is low cost and it's affordable, and when you also have that parameter to play with, then it's going to be also cost competitive to decarbonize, which is something that is very good.
In Denmark, we're actually rather fortunate because our parliament, all parties support the green transition. So we don't have any major changes in the policy and the goals. It takes a long time to build infrastructure, and it has a lifetime of 20, 30, 40 years. So it's very important to have long-term goals and a committed government.
We have granted support for renewables to get the development started, and we have refined our planning, our forecasting abilities over time. Not least, perhaps, we also managed to unbundle the system when it was liberalized in such a way that we created an independent transmission system operator which is working to realize the government's ambitions in this area in a very long-termish way.
There's a number of key issues that has been worked upon. First of all, we have worked on flexibility of the rest of the power system. So we have worked with the flexibility of our large power plants, and we have transformed these from being base load to being responsive part of the system. The second part is, of course, the interconnection.
So when we have a lot of wind in Denmark, we are often exporting electricity to Norway, and they hold back their water, and we supply their electricity demand. And then when we have no wind in Denmark, the export is from Norway towards Denmark, and then we use their hydropower.
This has been linked together through the power market, which is a very open, transparent market, so we are getting the right price signals. And we are beginning to work with new technologies that can give more demand response. And of course, looking forward, we are looking into transportation and other places that can add, so to speak, the responsiveness and the flexibility in the system that can accommodate the variability of wind and solar.
The next step for us is to beat the myth that renewables are not integratable into the system. And we do that by, of course, investing heavily in our technology, making that as reliable as it can be. The next frontier will probably be something more, as we call hybrids, which will speak very much in favor of integrating renewables, because if you integrate wind, solar, and maybe also batteries, you get a little bit more stable energy flow, which is something that will help grids and systems all around the world.
Competitive market is actually one of the main tools for our successful implementation or integration of wind power in the system. So we are nearly at the 50%, which is the goal for 2020. But then the next goal is actually to be independent of fossil fuels by 2050. And the tools that we have used for the first 50% will not be enough for the next 50%. So we have to open the new toolbox for the further development.
We want to move ourselves into being more of a solutions provider, thinking in different parts of energy technologies and how it actually impacts the system as a whole. There are many different ways of doing that. Low-hanging fruits for us would be to look into technology and manufacturing, and from there move up in the supply chain and see if there's a value to be captured there. But think of it as we were a wind turbine manufacturer, and now we're going to be a little bit more of a solutions provider for renewables.
We see new tools in a more vertical integration in the electricity system, where we call the first 50 share more based on horizontal tools, European electricity market, strong transmission grid, and a wholesale market in all of Europe. Now the vertical, we mean that we will go down and create a more coherent energy market all the way down to retail markets to incentivize more flexibility on the demand side. And the other way we see this vertical integration is between the different energy systems, so that we talk about coupling of energy sectors to create a coherent energy system where electricity, gas, heating, transportation and industry is all connected, and creating this flexibility between the different sectors and go from traditional power plants to power to gas. In addition to this, we see the digitalization as a major enabler of flexibility and new business models, where digital platforms and data sharing, data-based business model will create a lot of different business models, even behind the meter, out at the end consumer, where you can trade electricity and you can optimize the use of your PV, your heat pump for heating and charging of your electric car. So we see a lot of options with these digitalization and data-based business models. It requires political will and also courage to embark this transition. And without this push from government, it would never have happened.
If you have an energy system which is designed for the past, and you have the products or technology which is something that you want to install more of in the future, then you need to adapt. You need to increase the flexibility of the system. And lastly, if you actually have a market where you can trade energy, then the flexibility just increases and it becomes a lot easier to integrate renewables.
It's easy to erect wind turbines, it is easy to plug them in, but to operate the system based on wind power, that's where the challenge is.
We have given the world a number of examples how to use both technologies, but also the system thinking that are inherited in the Danish energy model to translate into business model that will suit the supply, the opportunities and development of other countries.
What we have found in Denmark is that free competition, no local content requirements and so forth creates the best and the most competitive development of renewables. And jobs will follow, but it takes a little while and it comes with the ambitions.
It's not an overnight development. We've been on this track for 30 years now and developed the necessary tools and the market, the transmission system. So there are ways to cope with it. That should be my main message.